Francisco, it's Rex Broadcasting Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer, and we're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. We're going to have Bruce Mitchell of the Pro Wrestling Torch as our guest. Bryan Alvarez may be calling in. I'm not sure if he will be or not. He's kind of on a vacation right now, being that it's July the 4th. And Bruce, how are you doing tonight?
Doing just fine.
And I'm losing. Hello.
Oh. Dave? Hello? I was doing fine. Hello?
Bruce? Hello? Okay, sorry for the technical problems, but anyways, Dave Meltzer here with Bruce Mitchell. We'll be talking with him right after the break. We've got a bunch of calls on the line already, surprisingly, for July the 4th. But anyways, if you want to call in, you can also call us at 1-800-878-PLAY. We'll be talking about Ric Flair's book. That'll probably be the number one topic of conversation today, being that that's been the number one thing that people have been talking about in wrestling all week, a lot of the controversial comments as far as Mick Foley, Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, and many others, and as well as the quality of the book itself. And we'll also be talking about last Sunday's Great American Bash pay-per-view, which was something to not remember, including new WWE champion John Bradshaw Layfield. And 6 months ago, you'd have told anyone that John Bradshaw Layfield was going to be the WWE champion this summer. I think they would have said, well, either you've lost your mind or Vince has lost his mind. And I guess in the next 6 months, we're going to find out if it was Vince who lost his mind. Also, we can talk about TNA and their current situation. We're about 5 weeks or so in now to their Wednesday, Thursday thing. And a lot of rumors that they will be moving out of Nashville for the Wednesdays to work in Orlando both nights, which will save a lot of money on airfare, that's for sure, and a lot of the transportation costs. Also makes the pay-per-view look better, but then the big question becomes Orlando itself. Can that market handle 2 straight nights without burning the audience out with too much wrestling? And that's a very big question, a very debatable point, because the Orlando crowd's not all that hot. I mean, as far as, having some trouble packing them, even at a Universal theme park. And 2 straight nights, especially after the summer's over, when we're talking about the theme park won't have as much traffic, going to be very interesting there in the long run. So anyway, we will be talking about all of those things and more. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Wrestling Observer live with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez. 2 guys who eat, sleep, and drink pro wrestling, even when it doesn't taste good.
Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. We're here with Bruce Mitchell of the Pro Wrestling Torch today. Bruce, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hey, Bruce, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
That's good. Bruce, I guess the number one topic of conversation this week, no doubt, we've talked about it all week, is the Ric Flair book. A lot of controversy about comments about different people, and I'm sure that we'll get phone calls. I got a feeling about that book in the next couple of hours. Bruce, you've read it. What's your thoughts?
Well, I just found out something really weird about it. My picture's in it.
Is it really?
Yes, it is. It's in the color section. One of my friends just called me to tell me. It's in the color section. And you were there that night, the night that Flair beat Sting in the Meadowlands.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I didn't even realize it the first time I read it, but just found that out. But I just finished rereading it. I'm getting ready to write my piece for it in the Torch, and I think it's a very good book. I mean, I think there's little flaws in it, but it's very revealing about the type of person that Ric Flair really is, and that's not something I really expected going into this book. I just think they did a very good job of rolling through the years with Ric Flair, and he's got a long career, and they did an excellent. I mean, Madden and Greenberg and everybody else did an excellent, and Flair himself did an excellent job with this book.
One of the things about the book, we're talking about being revealing. There hasn't been a book out that has been so revealing. I mean, the Lita book was somewhat revealing about her, a 28-year-old woman. But this book, obviously you're covering a lot more years, and in many ways, it left itself open for, a second book and more because, the career is just so extensive anyway. But, in any of the books, maybe the only book I can come up with off the top of my head that was so revealing towards the character is maybe Dynamite Kid's book, because Dynamite Kid, when you read the Dynamite Kid book, it was not a book that told you how great a wrestler Dynamite Kid was, whereas a lot of, the Mick Foley book, you kind of come across with what a great guy, what a fun guy Mick Foley would be to hang around with, okay? It's not so much of a, you look at the bads of the Mick Foley. The Dynamite Kid book, I mean, there was no question that, the Dynamite Kid was, I mean, he may not have even known himself, but he was not a great guy in the book, although it was a very good book. In the Ric Flair book, he's Ric Flair, the good and the bad. He's the cool guy, but he was also, the irresponsible guy.
The irresponsible guy, the guy who was very insecure, who was trying to live up, desperately trying to live up to Ric Flair, and didn't seem to know that he was Ric Flair in a lot of situations. And he had a lot of people telling him that, in fact, that he wasn't. And you get that sense. I mean, rereading the book, I was struck by how many times he talked about matches and just said this was a terrible match. He didn't try to claim that, everything that he did was great or everything that he did was, worked. I mean, it was really an interesting thing. And then, the whole story of the book is that dichotomy between being fun-loving Ric Flair and trying to be a normal person at the same time and being pulled in both directions. It's kind of the story of his life, and whether he'll ever reconcile everything. He started to now, but I mean, that being Ric Flair, as appealing as it looks like, had a real cost for him and his family.
But that goes with every wrestler. And the one thing, and I think this book really struck it for me, is, and I think this is probably the case for a lot of actors and celebrities and all that, but certainly wrestlers. I think that when you get to the core, almost every great wrestler in some form or fashion has a certain insecurity, and it's that insecurity that actually makes them break away from the pack, whether it's, Bret Hart or Mick Foley or Shawn Michaels or Hulk Hogan or Bruno Sammartino or any of them. There's something that makes them, I think with Ric Flair, I think what made Ric Flair the best night after night was this feeling that he had to be the best night after night. And, he had to, and that's why he was. With Mick Foley, if you look at, one of the Mick Foley stories that I remember is, this very famous Hell in a Cell match with Undertaker. The reason that match was what that match was because he was scared to death of having a bad match and being banned. Because there was a Hell in a Cell standard that Shawn Michaels and Undertaker had set, which was a pretty high standard. And Undertaker, if you remember that night, had a bad ankle and really couldn't do much. And Mick Foley thought, I've got to come up with something to save this match. And what was I saying? So, and I think with Rick, you almost had that night after night that he was out there with the crew, most of the time. Obviously, he was working a lot of different territories. But when he was working, let's say, that Mid-Atlantic crew or the later Jim Crockett Promotions crew in the 80s, you had one good worker after another up and down the card. And he was in the main event, and he was the world champion. And if he was anything less than Ric Flair, somebody would be better, and then he wouldn't deserve the world championship.
And that, and he really, and then when they started telling him that, in his early 40s, that he wasn't Ric Flair, that he didn't deserve it, and it was people like Jim Herd and even Eric Bischoff a little bit later on telling him that, he took it to heart maybe even more than he should have. That he had to go into therapy, that he had to, that he wondered, and that, it's a book. But
the one thing though, the one thing is if you notice that almost every wrestler, up and down the line, that was on top for a long period of time, that was a real, big-time player in the industry. When it comes time for that time to be over, and whether it's Hogan or any of them, they don't handle it well. I mean, like, you can almost say maybe San Martino handled it well, but the key with San Martino was his ascension was voluntary. It was not a promoter saying, Bruno, you're too old, you got to go. It was like, it was Bruno going, I'm sick of the schedule, I'm going to go. So it was, but most of them, it's the other way around. It's like, okay, you had your run, now it's time to go, and then everything you strive for. I think all athletes and a lot of people in Hollywood get the same thing, but you really see, with Rick, you see it, and you don't see it in the other books.
No, you do, and I think you're right. I mean, I think most of the other books are a real promotional thing, and I think this one, it's a promotional thing for Ric Flair's career, but it's also, he wanted to set the record straight. And, all through his career, he's never been a guy like that. He's been to say, the most opportune political thing at any one moment, and not to be very self-reflective. So, I mean, that really surprised me with this book. I mean, it just, and it made for a very interesting story, because he'd done so much and been so far, and that pressure to live up to it. He's still feeling it. He still wants it. I mean, you look at Michael Jordan. You look at athletes all over the place, and it is a hard thing to give up and stay away from. But he's aware of. He's more aware of it.
Yeah. The other thing, I guess, the number one thing is that you have his reflection and his perception of a lot of the different guys, and that's going to be the most talked about thing in the book, even more, I think, than the quality of the book itself, and the fact that he was so reflective of himself is his thoughts on, many, many different people, from Bruno Sammartino on down, Harley Race, and all of them, and in those people, in Ric Flair himself, you get the ups and the downs and the shades of gray, okay? In the other people, you really don't get the shades of gray. You either got the ones who Rick liked, and you got the ones he doesn't like, and it's quite an interesting take.
Yeah, and you really do understand that. And there were ones that I disagreed with him about. I disagreed with him about his take on Mick Foley. There was a case for a wrestler like Ric Flair and the style that Ric Flair wrestles to be down on Mick Foley, because Foley raised the bar for dangerous spots, and really for taking punishment. When the idea, Bret Hart was like this too, and the idea is to make it look real, but not for it to be real. And I thought he could have made some points with Foley, but he missed. And there's another couple of them, but it really was, with the exception, I thought, of, the people that he works with now, who he does like, but I don't think he put in the negatives of him. I think he really gave his real opinion. And that he was, there's a petty side to him that wants to get, and he said it, he wants to give out these receipts for people who had insulted him over the years, and he wants to pay them back. And you get, good or bad, that's what he really thinks. And that's not always what you get from professional wrestlers.
It's certainly not what you get from most professional wrestling books. The other thing about the book is the interesting part of who Rick is close with and who produced the book. And I'm talking about Vince McMahon and I'm talking about Triple H. And I think that's a dynamic that a lot of people haven't really looked at, in that Vince McMahon allowed Ric Flair to say a lot of things that he did not allow other people to say in their books.
Well, I know from talking to Mark Madden that in fact the problems with the book early on when Madden was brought in was because there was this feeling with Flair and McMahon and Triple H that he wasn't allowed to say, that Greenberg wasn't interested in having him say some things about Bret Hart and about Mick Foley in particular. And it's amazing that they wanted more of that and not less of it. And that's a real interesting,
Well, if you remember in the Hulk Hogan book, there it never came out really so much after the book, but you remember before the book, that said, Linda McMahon and Hulk Hogan had some major problems because they wanted Hulk Hogan to be a lot more controversial than he would, because Hulk Hogan, in his mind, didn't want to write something that his family would look at and, think less of him, whereas Ric Flair clearly, was writing the books that they wanted Hulk Hogan to write, but also that Hulk Hogan didn't praise Vince McMahon enough in the first draft, which was an interesting thing. And in this one, again, it's okay. It's okay to criticize some people. And he even kind of criticized Vince McMahon. If you know Ric Flair well, that's not really going to happen. We're going to go ahead to a break right now. We're going to come back with some phone calls as well right after this. You're listening to the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bruce Mitchell of the Pro Wrestling Forge, and we're going to be here for the next hour and a half or so, talking pro wrestling, and we've been talking about Ric Flair's book. We've got a bunch of calls. You can join us at 1-800-878-PLAY, and before we get back to, let's get to Flair's book, I want to talk to Bruce real quick about the decision to make John Bradshaw Layfield the WWE champion at the Great American Bash last Sunday. And that pay-per-view, where would you rank that? Because it's certainly among the worst pay-per-views of all time. But some people are saying it's the worst, and I can't go that far because I remember some pay-per-views where there was absolutely nothing good from start to finish, and this had a little bit good, but not much.
Well, I thought that, back, I've tried to block some of these out of my mind, but back when Jim Herd was running WCW and Flair had left, and they really were at a low ebb with talent, and they ran some gimmick pay-per-views, and including the one where, there's a good reason why I'm reminded of this, because of that stupid thing with Paul Bearer being murdered, when they put Abdullah the Butcher in that Chamber of Horrors match and electrocuted him. And that was just awful. And they had they had a couple of tournaments that were sort of Perry's Incredibles tournaments that were just, bad wrestling, bad booking, bad characters, and, WWE has had so many years of pretty consistently good pay-per-views that, this stunk in relation to that. It was really bad, but I don't think it lives up to some of the ones from that lives down to some of the ones from that era.
Okay, but a different question, and that is, since you've been watching wrestling, quote, major world champions, where does John Bradshaw Layfield stand?
Boy, that is a good question. Well, we don't know yet, but, for a guy who was a part-time tag team comedy guy, who was kept around because he was kind of one of the locker room enforcers, or assistant locker room enforcers, whatever you want to say, he came out of nowhere to do that. And, I wonder whether they don't, I think, the reason, I guess, is they want someone chasing a heel champion. And I also think it's, that Vince McMahon himself identifies with Layfield getting fired from CNBC, and he wants to stick it to everybody, but he just doesn't realize that, that was an issue in the world of wrestling, but, a commentator on a Saturday morning financial show getting fired just wasn't that big a deal to anybody else. And, that's part of it, too. But, I just wonder, and I wonder really how disappointed they are in Eddie Guerrero. Because that was supposed to last a lot longer than
obviously, no one will say this publicly, but as far as Guerrero, the worker, I don't know that they're disappointed. As far as Eddie Guerrero, the effective world champion, I don't think there's any question they're disappointed, because if they were not, they would not have made this move. Right,
and that's what I mean as far as the act on top. And maybe they want him to chase, or maybe it's Vince McMahon going back to.
It's not Eddie Guerrero to chase. It's Eddie Guerrero to take the title off of.
Right.
And there's a big difference in there. A lot of people think that's not. The decision was more take the title off of Eddie Guerrero than it was put the title on John Bradshaw Layfield. And John Bradshaw Layfield, hit a chord with Vince, and that's what kind of happened there. But the other aspect of that again is, when I saw him on Thursday on SmackDown, and we came that promo, and he had that belt on. There's certain things that it reminded me. I tell you, what it reminded me of. It was on TBS on that Saturday after Ron Garvin had beaten Ric Flair on I forget if it was on a Thursday or Friday night, but it was in Detroit. And here we are. Ron Garvin shows up. It might have been a week later, but it was the first time Ron Garvin went into that studio on TBS in '87, and he had the belt on, and he comes out, and all of a sudden, and you got to remember, Ron Garvin was not the biggest star in Jim Crockett Promotions at the time, but he was a star, and the people were very much into the Ron Garvin Ric Flair program. It wasn't a big money program, but the matches themselves were big successes. They were very brutal, they were very physical, and the people were into the matches. When he came out with Ric Flair's belt, that pretty much killed Ron Garvin. I don't think he was ever over again because he was the quote undeserving world champion, and they all kind of turned on him at once.
And Layfield didn't have that much heat going into as much as Ron Garvin had chasing Ric Flair. And it's a little bit different in that Garvin was a babyface and Layfield's a heel, but to me, for Ron Garvin and for Layfield, that first interview is a very important interview. And, as the champion, as how he carries it and all that. And Layfield did, his parody of a candidate on the campaign trail, during the presidential election, and it just didn't come off as a world champion big deal. And that's going to be a problem. I mean, they've got a lot of problems on that show. I mean, they just, it almost needs to be built from bottom up now.
Yeah, a lot deeper than John Layfield. And also John Layfield in the ring with Spike Dudley in that main event. I mean, that was not a world championship match. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be in the sense of you had Spike Dudley, and the whole idea of the match was to be a big bully making a joke of the world title match by giving the most undeserving guy a title shot. But in that situation, the champion should still look like a champion, and he did not. No, he did not. And I don't know that Undertaker chasing him is going to be anything. And the times that Vince McMahon has gotten scared with smaller wrestlers and gone back to the big wrestlers in the past. You and I were talking about this the other night. I mean, Sid and Undertaker, and going back to Kevin Nash, and going back to Diesel and those kind of things. It's not worked out very well. The panic move back to the big guys doesn't work out, and particularly now when work rate means more than it did back 10 years ago. Or even 5 years ago.
And Layfield just doesn't have it. And I don't know who, except for Eddie, we got Angle coming back. I don't know who does.
Well, they better hope that Angle, one of the things they better hope for is that Angle comes back all the way.
Right.
But even that, I'll tell you what, the bottom line is that SmackDown is in very rough shape, and, it's something we've talked about this since, WrestleMania when they lost Lesnar and then Angle got hurt. And then they did the draft, which only served to make things worse, which was supposed to save SmackDown and only served to make things worse. Ever since then, SmackDown has been struggling, and, even if Eddie Guerrero had stayed champion, the bottom line is that the problems with SmackDown are a lot deeper than who has the belt this week. And they are very deep. They're not something that, we're going to come in there and just go, well, you can, let's push Chris Benoit, you know what I mean? And then we'll save the day, There's no answers that are that easy. Anyway, let's get to the calls. We're starting with Alan in Deerfield Beach, Florida. Alan, what's going on?
Hello?
Hey there. What's up?
This is Chris in Vancouver.
Chris, well, what do you know? Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Dave. How are you?
Really good, really good. Did you go to the show the other night?
Did, actually. I was going to comment on that.
How was it aside from the empty building?
It was a disappointment. I mean, I don't know where wrestling's going, but these house shows, in Vancouver. Vancouver's been a hot market for World Wrestling Entertainment over the years, and boy, this house show, under 2,000 people, empty seats everywhere. The show was just, the main event was terrible. Benoit and Kane. Actually, the best match was Gail, Kim, and Victoria. That should tell you something.
Well, that tells me something right there, because I don't know how capable they are of having anything more than they can have a decent match, but they should not be having the best match on any show.
Dave, actually, a couple things I want to talk about before I get into the JBL thing. First off, I think house shows, back in the 80s, house shows used to be televised on MSG Network?
The Garden shows were televised on MSG Network, yeah.
Yeah, and so was the Boston Garden shows on NESN, right?
Right, and for a short period, the Spectrum shows were on Prism, and for a short period of time, the LA house shows were on TV as well. I think it was about 87, 88 maybe.
Do you think that would help house show tenants having those shows shown again? I don't know if they can do that with TV deals, because Fox, I think, operates out of the U.S. now. But do you think that would help, or something, like having those house shows televised and re-shown, like tape those house shows and then, sell them later, you know what I mean? Like WWE home video?
Well, I think that the problem is that in those days, you had your television was just syndication, which was largely squash matches, and those house shows were like the only chance to see competitive matches. Now when you've got the 2 hours of Raw and the 2 hours of SmackDown, you already have your kind of fill. Now, if Madison Square Garden Network were to start televising the Garden shows, for one thing, it would force them to kind of up the ante of the Garden shows, and I do believe that the Garden shows would draw better, significantly better than they're doing now. But I think that they probably feel that their production staff is so overworked with the amount of TV they got to do already that they're not, and nor should they be looking to add television just so they could maybe get the Garden attendance up from 8,000 to 10,000.
The other thing is the production values are so much better that if you just put on a house show without the production values, without all the pyro and the lights and all the extra effects, that I think that'd be a real problem. You'd have to up the ante to show those house shows, and it gets expensive.
I think the company itself would see it as cheapening what they show, unless it was a full-blown taping. And the full-blown taping, now you're talking about $350,000 to $500,000 a pop, and just now all of a sudden, then it starts not becoming cost-effective. But I think that's a very good point, Bruce.
Dave, before I let you go, JBL, comment I have on him is that Lex Luger, Rowdy Piper, Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Vader, those guys, Ricky Steamboat should have had the WWE title than Bradshaw, because Bradshaw is a mid-carder. I don't think he's a viable champion. I think he's a joke. They said they were going to reprimand him for his acts in Germany, and what did they do? They give him the world title? That's for his actions? It's a joke. The guy, it won't work. I always thought the Big Show was the worst WWE champion, but this guy is top of the list. I mean, SmackDown's a joke. I mean, I've always watched wrestling, but SmackDown, it's just getting so terrible. I mean, Jericho should be on SmackDown. I mean, he's a
Jericho. Edge. Here's the funny thing. Edge was brought to Raw from SmackDown largely so Triple H would have a new opponent when he was champion, and Edge didn't really get over to that degree that they had hoped for when he came back. But Raw could lose Edge and Jericho right now. They could go over to SmackDown, and it would help SmackDown, and it wouldn't really hurt Raw that much. But although Raw, although they can watch Raw on Monday, they're afraid to put guys on TV now. They're afraid that they're going to lose their quarter hours, because if you watch that show, they only had 10 guys on the show practically, if you think about it.
Raw's been supported more by. I think Raw's an illusion, because it's like they've been supported by that Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chris Benoit three-way feud that was so good for so long, and it's run its course. And now I think they're going to have their problems too, and they're doing the nutty garbage with the Lita Kane baby daddy deal.
The one thing that Raw does have though is that it does have more general public star power. And,
it does.
Anyway, we've got it. Chris, thanks very much for the call. We've got to head to a break right now. We'll be back with more right after this. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of Wrestling Observer Newsletter. With Bruce Mitchell of the Pro Wrestling Torch, we're going to be here. We're here every Sunday night from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We're here on a holiday weekend, but we've got every line lit up. So if you're calling up, and you can call us at 1-878-PLAY, you're going to have to wait until someone hangs up, and then you can jump on one of those lines. We are going to go to John. John, what's happening?
First of all, I want to just say to everybody, happy 4th of July there. So,
okay.
I wanted to talk about. I kind of was speed read through Flair's book. And really, to me, the Foley stuff wasn't really that much of a problem to me, because I heard Bret Hart, talk about this before. To me, the most surprising thing was the fact that the Arn Anderson skit didn't come from Hogan, didn't come from Nash, didn't come from Bischoff, came from Terry Taylor. That was the most surprising thing to me that came out of the book.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. A lot of it was Nash's idea, though.
Mm-hmm. And the key point of that was there was no comeback.
Right.
That was Horseman got used and beat up during that era of the NWO. They never made a comeback. And what Flair writes about in that book about, they really went out of their way to do it here in North Carolina, in the old Mid-Atlantic area. And, to the point that it hurt their business here a lot. And that, to me, I would want to know who made the decision, because clearly they would have said, should we have them come out and attack us? And they never did. I mean, that was about sticking it to Arn Anderson. That was about sticking it to Ric Flair. Whether Terry Taylor came out with the idea in the beginning, it wasn't so much that they did a skit, it was that there was no comeback.
Right.
Because and the nature of the personal nature of some aspects of the skit as well. a lot of the things, like just an example, the person, I think a lot of people know this, the person who came up with the David Arquez World Champion idea was Tony Schiavone. However, ultimately, the person who formulated it and did it was Vince Russo. So, you can go in there and say, God, it really wasn't Vince Russo's idea, it was Tony Schiavone's. It was Vince Russo who heard it and goes, man, that's a great idea, rather than saying, man, that's a lame idea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because they are. They're throwing out ideas all the time. I mean, and some of them, I'm sure some of them are lame ideas that get killed.
A lot of them are, because look at the ones that seep through.
Lord, yeah.
One thing I wasn't able to go through because I was just speed reading through the book. I want to sit down and just go through it more comprehensively. But was the accusations that you would hear from people from like Shane Douglas and others would say when Ric Flair was in power, he was holding others back. Or he was saying this guy couldn't work. This guy, is only so far as that's the highest level he can go up to as a wrestler.
Well, I never bought that he held back Shane Douglas particularly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we knew. I mean, if you look at who Shane Douglas was and how good he was when he was in WCW, I don't think he was either pushed too far, or I think he was about at the level that he should have been before he left. Paul Heyman really jumped on him and took advantage of his interview skill, and he did very well in ECW. But
does he address it in the book? Because I'm wondering about those accusations, or
not really
about the Shane Douglas thing, or
not really. I think he did address the idea when Steiner knocked him for holding back Steve Austin. Mm-hmm. I think he said that he had nothing to do with Steve Austin, and in fact was a fan of Steve Austin.
Right.
And if you remember when Austin. I don't remember who was exactly booking, because it was all basically committee stuff. Yeah. When Austin and Pillman were broken up. I remember Greg Gagne was the one who actually told Pillman, you guys aren't getting over as a team, which was hilarious. And there was an idea of Steve Austin a single star when they broke up that team. But when Austin Starr, fell out of the sky, because Austin was doing quite well in WCW as a rising star, was when Hogan came in. And Hogan, Hogan had his own agenda and had his own guys, and Steve Austin wasn't one of them. And that was '94 when I forget what it was, when Duggan beat him in like 30 seconds, right, on the pay-per-view.
Right. And that was pretty much the end of Steve Austin and WCW.
And then Austin never got another push. And then remember they tried to feed him to Renegade, and Steve Austin held up that TV taping, and that was already the Hogan regime by then.
Yeah. Two last quick questions for you, Dave. First of all, with Bradshaw, why didn't they start him off as because you know what, even though I don't like the guy, even though, it just rubs me the wrong way whenever I see him on air, I think if he had been given the U.S. Championship, I would have been satisfied with that. If he had been started off in the mid-card and if he had won the U.S. Championship, I'd be fine with that, and then gradually build towards the World Championship. Why didn't they think of, why not put Booker T? Were they scared?
Well, I can tell you the reason, because they ran out of heels, because Big Show got hurt and Kurt Angle, Brock Lesnar all quit. Mm-hmm. So that's why he was thrust into the main event spotlight. Now, as far as being given the title, to me, again, I guess maybe I have an idealistic viewpoint of the championship from when I was a kid, and the champion should be someone who is either the best guy in the company, or, if nothing else, arguably the best guy in the company, where he goes out there and goes, I'm the world champion, I'm the best wrestler in the world. You can go, maybe I believe it, maybe I don't, but I can accept your argument. When Bradshaw would go out there and say that, I would just go, you're a freaking, you're a joke, you're not even in the top half. So I think that's where part of the Bradshaw problem to me with the belt is. The other thing is that if Bradshaw had been, given this chance out of nowhere, here's this guy,
right?
And I think his promos are very good. I think he's transformed his character. I think this transformation of his character is great. But being put in that situation that he's in, has he been? If you take a guy in his first main event program of his career, basically in WWE, his first serious program as a single. And did the program work? Was the program successful? No. Then you give him the world title. I think that's a desperation act, because the least you could do is at least have been successful in your run. Even like with Ron Garvin was not super successful chasing Ric Flair, but he was not, by no means was it a failure. And Layfield, has been a failure as a program for all the time, but he's given, and then he still gets the belt.
Dave, what's so sad to me is the fact that he can't go more than 5 minutes without sucking wind during a match.
Well, he's done better. He's done better of late, but I know what you're saying. He can't go out there. I mean, I couldn't imagine him and Undertaker going out there and doing a 20-minute match. I mean, he was out there with Eddie Guerrero, who's a great wrestler, and I mean, they had good main events. Both of them were good matches, but they're not the caliber of what you expect a WWE World Title match to be. It's well below that character. And then that's with Eddie Guerrero. Imagine when he's, let's just say he's a successful world champion. He's got defended against Rob Van Dam, who's difficult to work with, or John Cena, who's even more difficult to work with. Those are actually scary matches, and the world champion theoretically should be someone who either can wrestle a world championship match and then wrestle a good match with a lot of different people, or he's somebody like a Hulk Hogan or an Ultimate Warrior who is just such a big drawing card that, you go, screw the good match. The bottom line is so many people are coming, and casual fans are coming that don't know it's a bad match, and it's working anyway.
And we don't see the belt coming off of him in 2 weeks, right? We see it
not in 2 weeks. I don't see it in 2 weeks. I mean, I can't imagine having a long run just because I don't see him being successful, because I don't think anyone on SmackDown is going to be successful now. And the guy with the belt is the guy that takes too much blame, and that's what happened with Eddie to a degree. And then it'll happen with Bradshaw. I mean, and they'll want to make a change. It's, whether it's SummerSlam or whether it's right after SummerSlam. The question is, again, looking at that roster that they got right now, I guess if Angle comes back 100%, you can go to some transition guy and then switch it to Angle. But Angle, Angle's not the savior either. Even though even if he comes back 100%, he may be a savior in the ring, but they've got box office problems that are scary bad, really.
Well, thanks for taking my call, Dave.
Okay, you're very welcome, John. Let's go to Dave in New York. Dave, what's going on?
Hello? Hey, good evening, guys. How you doing?
Doing really good. What's going on?
Well, first, actually, Dave, I wanted to compliment you on your To Be the Man book review this week in the Observer. Once again, it's fantastic, and I'm very much looking forward to the next installment in the history of the WWF title. And I've told you before, I think that should be released in book form when it's finally finished.
Well, I'm trying to get it in book form, and the only problem is that there's so much, and to a book, one of the issues that you get is that the book people want a certain number of, they want it limited to a certain number of things, and I've already, like with the tributes book and everything, we're just hacking it away because, the stories of like Luthez and Stu Hart alone are half of the book, you know what I'm saying?
I can see that. And
so I could see I wanted to do a history of the WWE through 1992 because I thought that the last piece that I did, which was right when they had hit their big heights and then everything had kind of gone down in 92, and I thought that was a good stopping point. And then do a second book of 1992 to the present, but they're going, oh, we want a book, and I'm thinking doing one book on that whole company over 40 years, you're just going to have to go through everything too quick.
An encyclopedia.
Yeah, I know.
Dave?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, Dave. We got to go to a break right now. Come on, we'll get back to you right after this, okay?
Great, thank you.
Okay, live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Hey, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of Wrestling Observer Newsletter. We're here with Bruce Mitchell, and we got Dave. We're going to go to after the hourly break because we only have about a minute before the break. So anyway, Bruce, we want to wrap up this hour real quick. I want to ask you your thoughts on now that we're about 5 weeks or so in. I think it's been 5 weeks since TNA started television. What's kind of like your scorecard, real quick, on where they're at?
I think they've helped themselves with the look of that new Impact show, and I think they've helped themselves they've had good crowds, enthusiastic crowds, but they still have the same basic problem, which is the mission statement of that company, whether they admit it or not, is to be a promotional vehicle for Jeff Jarrett, and no one's buying. And no one's going to buy, and that's a real problem. So until that changes, and I don't see it changing, I think TNA is going to be the same TNA that we've been used to for 2 years.
I agree that clearly that part of this is a vehicle for Jeff Jarrett. I think it's been that way from the start. For Jerry Jarrett to push Jeff Jarrett, very much reminiscent and not in a good way. And you know, it was a good thing. Jerry Jarrett, you know, as promoter, made his success, and even before he was promoter as a booker, with Jerry Lawler, who was one of the greatest talkers there was. And Jeff is not Jerry Lawler, and they are like trying to like I do with JYD. You know, I want to recreate JYD because I made so much money. Jerry Jarrett wants to create Jerry Lawler. That's how he knows how to book. And unfortunately, he doesn't have Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, it's more than just manipulation. You've got to have the right talent to manipulate.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and say hourly break right now. We'll come back to the game. You can also join us at 1-800-878-PLAY. You're listening to Wrestling Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Let's get it on!
Okay, we're back here with Hour 2 of the Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and subbing for Bryan Alvarez this week is Bruce Mitchell with the Pro Wrestling Torch, and we've been talking a lot about Ric Flair and John Bradshaw Layfield. We're going to go to Dave in New York. Dave, what's happening?
Hey guys, thanks for coming back to me. I'd actually like to make one comment on the Ric Flair book if I can, and that is something about the absurd grudge that Lex Luger seems to hold against Ric Flair for not dropping the title to him on a few occasions, when, as Dave mentioned in this week's Observer, Flair probably made Luger's career, and not only did he make Luger's career...
Actually, didn't hear what you said.
I'm sorry, I said Flair made Luger's career, as you mentioned, but not only did he make Luger's career, he could have destroyed it too, when after the power play with Dusty Rhodes was over in 1988, late 1988, Flair was booked to pin Luger clean at Starrcade, and actually he's the one that turned it down and instead chose to pin Luger with his feet on the ropes. And I think that would have significantly hurt Luger's career at the time, when wins and losses still meant something. But the major reason I'm calling is because I wanted to talk to you about the presumable Triple H against Randy Orton match that will probably headline right at 21. And the indications to me seem to be that Triple H will be the guy to turn face, and I think they're hinting at that with the false, pseudo face turn with Michaels a few weeks ago, and how Triple H is welcoming Eugene into Evolution, and there seems to be some dissension among the other members. But to me, I really think Randy Orton should be the one to turn, mainly because Triple H is the veteran, and he's so much bigger than Orton. He's obviously going to be considered the favorite. And to me, Booking 101 philosophy would say you make the underdog the babyface, and Randy Orton, no two ways about it, is going to be the underdog in that match. And I was wondering what you thought about that.
I can't hear anything.
Hello.
Hello?
Yeah.
I can't hear anything.
Can you hear me, Bruce?
Now I can.
Okay. I couldn't hear
it now. Hello?
Yeah, Bruce, can you hear me?
Hello? Hello?
Observer live on the Sports Byline Radio Network.
with the UFC, and you're listening to the Wrestling Observer with Dave Meltzer and Bryan Alvarez.
What? Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bruce Mitchell, the Pro Wrestling Torch, subbing for Bryan Alvarez. Bruce, can you hear me?
You're fading in and out on me again.
Oh, geez, that's not good.
Fine during the commercial, and then you're fading in and out.
Okay, could you hear the last caller?
About Lex Luger, about Lex Luger having the grudge against Ric Flair for not doing the job for the title for him in like 93 and 94, I believe.
Okay, I couldn't hear. So what was the point? Is there anything that I need to add to that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think there was any much more to it. He said that he thought that Flair was the one who volunteered after the sale was made at Starrcade to put his feet on the ropes to pin Luger instead of just pinning him clean, which I think there's more to the story than that, but that's probably the last point.
Which is true. I think that Luger, the career of Lex Luger is very interesting because he was brought into wrestling because of his look, and he was pushed from the start because of his look. And so he thought that the only important thing, and till the very end, I mean, I think he probably even thinks this today, because, I mean, you look at the end of WCW with Luger and Buff Bagwell, they never got it. You know, they never got that the fact that they weren't good workers was going to kill him. I think to this day, Bagwell may not get it. I don't think Luger still thinks Vince McMahon was going to, I don't want to say he does today because he may not think it anymore, but even, what was it, a year ago, you know, he was sitting there going, I got to get big, and he's 305 pounds, because he thinks that Vince has to call because it's all about bodies and it's all about look. And I think that Luger never understood, you know, because he wasn't a good wrestler and got the push, that, you know, how much Flair actually did for him, and he only remembers that Flair didn't lose to him those 3 times, and, you know, held the grudge forever. And also I think he felt that it was, I think that Luger and Sting to a degree, it's certainly Luger, and a lot of the younger guys in wrestling, and I think this was a big part of Flair's career, they thought that, you know, when Flair came around, and when we started watching wrestling in the 70s, you know, I hate to say like this old-timer stuff, but there is something to it. You had to earn your main events, and you had to earn your championships to a degree in the sense that you had to draw. It was not a matter of, I'm in the business for 10 years, therefore I deserve the U.S. title. You know, I mean, it wasn't a longevity thing, or, you know, you work your way up the ladder and you get there. It's like, yeah, you work your way up, but you got to be able to hang at that level. And I think that Luger, you know, saw that when he was coming up, that, you know, he was 9 years younger than Flair. So Flair's, you know, 40, Lex is 31, and he figures it's going to soon be my turn. And it really got to him that, you know, even though he sort of did have his turn, he never, you know what I mean? It never really came, his career, I don't think, ever panned out. Like, certainly not like any of the promoters thought it would, or like he did, and there's a reason for it, but I don't think he ever got the reason.
You know, and the other thing, I mean, Lex Luger got his chance without Ric Flair with the promotional vehicle of the World Wrestling Federation behind him 100%, and it did not work. I mean, Luger wasn't just, he wasn't just missing it in the wrestling category. There was something about his personality that just didn't make it as a top guy.
True, although, you know, if you go back, that was handled, you know, with WWE, I mean, they shot him to the moon, but it was handled poorly because everyone knew at that SummerSlam he was going to get the championship, and then Vince decided, let's not be so predictable, let's hold it off to WrestleMania, and they killed his momentum. But and having said that, I don't believe strongly. I don't believe that it would have turned out any different had he given him the title then. It just would have, you know, he would have gotten the title and flopped. That's all. Let's go to Joe in Rhode Island. Joe,
I'm here.
Hey, Joe, what's going on?
Not too much. JBL is not the Internet's favorite guy, so to speak, but I really like where they're going with it. And
you know, you talk about the Internet. The Internet doesn't mean anything. It's the box office, and he's nobody's favorite guy. I mean, if you look at, you know, I mean, he's been put on top, and it's been a freaking disaster. And it's not his fault. He's in a bad brand. I happen to like I said, I happen to like his interviews. I can't say I like his wrestling, but the bottom line is that, again, when we're talking about like guys proving something, he ain't proved nothing. You know what I mean? And I think that's the big problem people have. It's not like, oh, the internet, you know, that's what JBL himself wants to think in his own deluded way, to the fact that it's not, you know, it's not working. You know, I mean, let's blame it on the internet. It's not the internet. It's, you know, every night when they go out there, there's a paid attendance. You know what I'm saying? And it's not the be-all and end-all of wrestling because they don't promote their house shows well, but it is something. And if you have it, it will make a difference. And he, you know, he was given the opportunity and, you know, has shown nothing but still got the championship. And I think that's where a lot of the qualms are.
Okay, so he lucked out and he got his foot in the door. But the basic principle is they're going back to a heel that's a true heel. For the last, if you look at the boom period, we had cool heels. I think what a lot of people are having issues with is here's a guy who's not afraid to go out there and play a true heel that everybody hates. And I understand what you're saying about him not being a box office draw, but with the rest of the product right now, who could be a box office draw?
Nobody would, but nobody also was handed something. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, he was handed a main event spot without even being an effective mid-carder. Now, I thought he did very well when he was handed that spot, to the extent of I think that he plays a very good mid-card to high mid-card heel. Now, granted, there are no main eventers on that side, so he's been put in a bad position. But, again, if that championship is to mean anything now and for the future, it should mean something special. And by handing it to someone because we have no idea, or someone who is not successful just because we need a heel as champion, that's what happens. That basically is going to mean, and does mean now, that these championships are worthless anyway. And that's, once your championships are worthless, that's what WCW had that problem. Then you get into a problem, because that's a hard thing to turn around, because if the champion, you know, you start having like anyone can win the title. It's just a question of it's their turn, and it's not even someone who's arguably, I mean, even no matter how you slice it, there is nobody in this world except for maybe John Bradshaw and his mother who believe that John Bradshaw Layfield is the top guy on SmackDown. But he's got the belt, and all that means is, okay, we've got a guy who maybe could be a good U.S. champion getting the world belt, so we've got a world belt that means what the U.S. belt means, which is nothing. So I think that's my kind of qualm with him as champion. I don't have like I said, I like his interviews, but, you know, the whole package, I mean, what has he done? What has he proven? What has he earned? I guess that's my thing. What has he earned? He's earned nothing, and I think that's where everyone kind of comes from. It's like, you know, yeah, there's nobody else. They could have turned Undertaker heel. That probably would have been better. It wasn't going to save the brand either, but if nothing else, if Undertaker had gotten that championship, people would have complained because it's, you know, Undertaker and he's old and all that, but they would at least say, here's a guy who, at certain points in his career, has proven something, who's not, you know, who's still a pretty decent worker for a big guy. And, you know, with Layfield, you can't say that.
Well, I think you can. I mean, I think he's been given opportunity to step up. And whether he does or not, and stepping up to me doesn't mean work rate. Stepping up to me means how is his reaction at house shows. Sure, he may not be a money-drawing champion, but I don't think he's being put in a position to be a money-drawing champion. I think.
Well, when you're given the world title, you certainly are. I mean, granted, he couldn't because of the nature of the business. But the point is, when you're given the title, you are put in the position to be a money-drawing guy.
True.
Now, I mean, granted, now, even if he was great, he would have trouble doing that now because of the nature of the business. Again, to me, I don't see what he's done that's great. When he came out at the pay-per-view in Norfolk, okay, I mean, and when he came out in Fayetteville, in both cases, when he came out, you know, one time with a belt, the other time just coming out for a main event match for a guy who's been pushed as the top guy for 2 months, the reaction was tepid by the people who paid to see him. That's your last of your hardcore fans. If they're not reacting to him like, I mean, I've seen heels. They're not reacting to him like some heel that's over. I mean, if he insults them long enough on his promo, by the end of the promo, yeah, they're going to boo him. But, you know, anyone can do that. I mean, Ric Flair can do that in 15 seconds, and they love him. You know, so I don't see what he's earned, and I guess that's my whole point on Layfield. You know, it's like he was handed something.
Because, why? Because he got fired by CNBC and Vince got mad.
Yeah, but I mean, if he had an outstanding quote work rate, then we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, because that's part of the show. Part of being a main eventer, particularly when it comes to the pay-per-views themselves, is having a great main event match. It's not the be-all and end-all. If you can draw, you don't have to be a great worker, okay? But if you can't draw and you're not a great worker, then what are you doing in the main events? I mean, you don't have either one.
But in a time when he may either grow into it or not, there's no other option. So what Vince did.
Well, there are always other options. You could bring Jericho over. You could bring Edge over. You could bring Triple H over. You could turn Undertaker heel. There's always you can bring in Bill Goldberg and make him a heel. There's a million options if I mean there's a million options really.
I completely disagree. I think they're going back to basics, and I think it's going to take longer to rebuild the SmackDown brand than it did the Raw brand. Stack the Raw brand, and they made that the Star brand, and the B brand was the SmackDown brand. But I think overall, what they're trying to do is get back to basics, going back to heels that incite crowd reactions. He may not be there yet, but he's only been given 8 weeks. I mean, Ric Flair, even though he's the greatest in the world, wasn't a top.
But what is it? But he hasn't proven anything to begin with, and I don't see building around Bradshaw as being a turnaround. I see building around Bradshaw as being you're basically throwing our hands in the air and go, we've got no ideas, so let's put the belt on this guy because we got nobody else. When if they thought about it and made sacrifices that you need to make when you're down, like I just said, I just came up with a bunch of ideas right there. That all given the same amount of push would have been superior. So I don't see that they have no ideas. I see that they don't want to. I see them as not wanting to make any changes. We've got to head to a break right now, okay? So I want to thank you very much for calling. We're back right after this. This is the Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. You should have heard that. Okay, welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter, with Bruce Mitchell of the Pro Wrestling Torch. Bruce, can you hear me?
You're still fading in and out on me.
Okay, well, we will do the best we can. We got about a half hour left. We've got one line available at 1-800-878-PLAY, so you can hop on board and you should be able to get in before the end of the hour. We're going to go to Boston, and Derek, what's going on?
Hey, Dave. I just had a couple of quick questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is all the rumors on the news boards that are run by 13-year-olds that still news from you are saying that the hot news is that Billy Gunn is really upset with WWE and he's going to jump to TNA. Is there?
Well, I'm sure he's got a contract. I mean, he was at the Orlando show, not this last Thursday, but the Thursday before, and he was talking to Road Dogg, and he was, I mean, listen, if you were Billy Gunn, okay, and this was your lot in WWE, you're not going to be happy. But he does have a contract. I don't know that anyone from WWE would be that anxious to go to TNA, and Billy Gunn shouldn't be that anxious because, I don't know what they could do with him. I don't know. I mean, if he can get a good deal and it's 2 nights a week and it's Orlando and it's near home and they're doing both shows in Orlando, maybe Billy Gunn, maybe it would be better, but that's not to say that, if they release him, I'm sure they're going to give him, or if they give him a release, they'll probably give him a 90-day to 120-day non-compete to make sure, he doesn't jump right onto their TV. So it's if you're a wrestler switching sides right now, it's unless your contract is like expired, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, but if I was Jerry Jarrett and I was looking for people to buy my show, I wouldn't base my show around Billy Gunn because I'm pretty sure not too many people would want to invest in something like that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm not sure Billy Gunn's the answer for TNA. What does he bring to the table for them?
Oh, yeah. My other question is, now, next Sunday at the Vengeance pay-per-view, everybody knows it's going to happen. They can see it from a mile away, but Eugene's going to turn heel. Now, here's my idea.
I hope not. Oh. You may very well be right, but I sure hope not.
Well, here's what I think they're going to do, right? Is they're going to make it seem like Eugene really wasn't a retard to begin with.
Okay. I like that idea for when he turns heel. But, boy, I think that's like 6 months too early. Maybe 9 months too early to do that.
Yeah, well...
But I thought of that same thing. Go in there, do the turn, and say I was fooling you all along. Yeah, I think that someday they probably should do that angle because he can't play this role forever.
Well, it worked perfect because Nick Dinsmore practically is Chris Benoit with a better hairdo.
I don't know. I don't know if he has a better hair too, but maybe it's not worse.
That's it for tonight. Want to wish you all a happy OLC 4th of July, and talk to you later.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, we're going to go to John in Savannah. What's going on?
What's going on, Dave?
Hey, not too much. How you been?
I'm doing all right. How have you been?
Doing pretty good.
I have a couple questions for you, and I do have one about JBL, but I'll wait about that since everybody's talking about that. But the first one I had a question about was that I saw on the lineup for the Budokan show, when SmackDown goes over there, I guess, in, what is it, I guess in about...
They're going the 16th and the 17th, so we're 12 and 13 days away, yeah.
Yeah. And I saw that Noble and London were left off of it. Originally they were going, and then they were left off of it. Is there anything to read into that? I mean, I know normally on those shows that guys like that would probably be going.
I don't think there's anything to read to that other than what you would already know from everything. I mean, look at the last pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see on both rosters. The one thing you can see with you right now is so many of the guys have been typecast in, whether it's the management's eyes, fans' eyes, or both, that they're just not. I think that their typecast is not being ready for the major leagues or not being major leaguers because in the case of London, probably too small. In the case of Noble, it better be too small because I can't think of anything else wrong with them. But you like the Val Venus and Maven and all these guys, and some of them. Probably, but I think that they've just decided that these guys aren't worth pushing, and I think that's the answer. In the cruiserweight division, it's you can see, in the last 2 months or so that the company's if they had any faith in it, they don't any longer. And I don't know, London kind of made a big mistake going up there. London was like this high school basketball player who decided to skip college and go to the pros, and now he's sitting on the bench, and he'd better off going to college for a couple of years.
Do you think he'll end up like Spanky and end up leaving and then go over to Japan and wrestle over in 0-1?
I think it's best for him to do that. Whether but Paul London, unlike Spanky went to Japan, liked Japan, was a big fan of independent wrestling. So Paul London, I mean, one of the things when he signed, when he was working for TNA and then he signed with WWE, and I remember talking to people. I never spoke to him, but it was. He's making a mistake. I mean, that was my thought. Paul London is making a mistake going there because he's small and he's not going to get over, and they're not that he's not going to get over, that he will not get the opportunity to get over in the first place. So the response was, Paul London doesn't care about Japan. He's not one of those guys whose goal growing up, he didn't watch Japanese tapes like Spanky and a lot of the guys who, are into being stars in Japan are just good enough for them. He's not in Japan. He's not into TNA. His whole goal has always been WWE. Now, it turned out back because there's no point in being WWE when you're the age he is and not, getting your career going. I mean, it's a steady paycheck. If he couldn't get a steady paycheck elsewhere, I guess, money. But I don't know that he's making any more money than he would make if he was doing Japan and TNA, and he's getting no exposure and he's getting no opportunity, which is, at his age, is more important than anything. And he should leave. But obviously the fact that he hasn't quit on his own says that, he's afraid to leave. Or he's happy with the money, he's just happy being, maybe he's just happy being a member of the team that doesn't get to contribute. I don't know.
What's the latest on Kid Cash and TNA?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. I mean, there are guys in the company who have expressed to me that they believe that the firing or whatever it is of Kid Cash right now is a work. Now, the suspension on Wednesday was a work. He was not suspended on Wednesday.
Okay.
That's not. He wrestled in that match because. Right. He showed up the day of the show and said he wouldn't go on, right. And I think that is, and then they had to do the six-way, and I think that, wrestlers, being that it's a Vince Russo thing and that they're naturally paranoid, and maybe and they very well be right. A lot of them think this whole thing is just a big work on the boys, but theoretically, I mean, he's got tremendous heat on him for the statements that he made, in the Pro Wrestling Insider interview with Bryan a couple weeks ago, and management was furious at him. Now, whether they would, Vince Russo would take that and want to do an angle with it. Of course, it doesn't mean anything, but he'd still want to do it, and so that's why I think a lot of people are going like, oh, it's one of those, fake angles. So we'll see, I guess, in the next couple of weeks.
If he did get fired, what are his chances of, where would he end up? Where would he go?
Kid Cash.
He's not going to pick him up.
I don't know what Kid Cash was. Kid Cash was running around telling everyone he can go to SmackDown because he's friends with Paul Heyman. But, I mean, he doesn't realize that Paul Heyman doesn't have any pull there right now. And even if he did, look at, we were just talking about Paul London and Jamie Noble.
Yeah.
It's like Kid Cash is a lot older than those guys. He ain't going to get any. He's not going to get any shot. He's a good talker. Sometimes he's a really good worker, but he ain't going to get any shot on a WWE roster.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that's not going to happen.
I got two quick questions for you. One is, how in the world? I'm surprised nobody else has brought this up. I've been watching SmackDown. I've been watching both Raw, SmackDown, and Impact and everything. But how in the world did Kenzo Suzuki ever get a job with WWE?
That's like one of the 9 great mysteries of the world.
I have no idea. This guy, honestly, if people quit watching SmackDown, if people decide to turn off SmackDown and they've not watched it, this guy makes Nathan Jones look like, I don't know. He didn't make him look like Ric Flair, but I don't know. I could go say a lot of things about Kenzo Suzuki, but I think that the Kenzo Suzuki thing, to me, is a total expose of certain things in that company, because everyone in the world knew, except for them. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Everyone knew. Everyone knew Kenzo Suzuki was horrible in Japan. Kenzo Suzuki was horrible when he did that match in TNA. Kenzo Suzuki, he, in Japan, he's like, what was it, the Lex Luger of Japan, so they hire him. They wanted to push him against Benoit for the title all summer when they thought the Triple H was going to be in the movie.
I remember you saying that.
The people who make those decisions, whether it's Ace, whether it's Vince, whether it's Stephanie, there are some major flaws in that system, and Kenzo Suzuki is proof of, because this shouldn't have happened. And he ain't the only one. You go up and down that roster, and every big muscle guy that's been brought in too soon, that we've been on the show and written about constantly about it's too soon, he's not ready. Nathan Jones, perfect example. They do it anyway, and almost without. There may have been an exception, but I can't come up with one. Almost everyone's bit them in the butt. Matt Morgan was a failure. Nathan was a failure. Kenzo's a failure. I don't want to say that Luther Reigns is a failure, because if they let Luther Reigns talk, he may make it. But in the ring as a wrestler, without given a character and a lot of time to talk, Luther Reigns will not make it on his work ever. Heidenreich. Oh my God.
He just kind of phased away.
Yeah, they got rid of his. That was. But and here's the other thing. When you watch, so many of these guys are training to have one character, and they go to WWE and they give them a whole new character, and they weren't even good in their original character that they spent 6 months on. Then they got to go where the standards are 1,000,000 times higher with a new character that they're not used to. Sometimes, in the case of Matt Morgan, he'd spent his whole career as a babyface in OVW. They bring him in as a heel, no experience as a heel, and you saw what happened. What can I say?
Real quick, is Mordecai? What is the deal with him?
Mordecai's back in OVW now.
No more Mordecai.
Yeah, no more Mordecai. That was Bob Holly did a number on him.
Okay. And one last quick thing. Do you think with the JBL thing, this is my one thing I want to say, do you think if it was somebody else, say Shannon Moore or somebody like that, with the same type of actions that they did, even over in Germany or whatever?
If Shannon Moore did a Nazi thing, he'd probably be fired.
Exactly. So, with that type of, double standard, what does that say to, other people within the company?
There always, in wrestling, there's always going to be a double standard for the people who likes, and the people who are stars are always going to get away with more than the preliminary guys. It's always going to be like that. Every wrestler knows it. It's not like you're setting a bad example. Yeah, but, if a preliminary guy tried to do what Hulk Hogan did, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They wouldn't lie. There's always going to be a double standard for stars. Can you imagine some preliminary guy behaving like Ultimate Warrior when Ultimate Warrior was in WWE? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, that's just how it is. Anyway, we got to go ahead and break right now. We're back with more. Bryan Fish, Wrestling Observer, live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Okay, welcome to Wrestling Observer Live. I'm Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter. We're here with Bruce Mitchell, the Pro Wrestling Torch, and we also have a bunch of callers on the line. You can jump in at 1-800-878-PLAY. Bruce, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Bruce, Kenzo Suzuki. That was the subject of the last caller. How did this ever happen?
You know, the thing to me about it is, if you ask somebody who wasn't in the wrestling business to say, okay, you're going to go out, you're going to find a new act, what is the first thing you need to do? They're going to say, see that new act wrestle, or see that, or if you're a singing, if you're a singing scout, or if you're a baseball scout, you want to see the person play, you want to see the person sing. And clearly, John Laurinaitis did not see Suzuki.
Job. The problem is it was only John Laurinaitis to do one thing, but it's more than just John Laurinaitis. This is a whole company.
You know, the whole company that you think the one basic thing that you'd want to do is see this person do the thing that you're going to hire him to do. And, you know, he's not the only one. I don't know that they saw Mordecai. You know, they saw Fertig in OVW, and they clearly don't really care who Jim Cornette and the OVW management think is ready to go up. I mean, they just pluck people when they want them, and you would scout them and go see them, and there's no excuse for it today because you've got tapes. You don't even have to travel to go see somebody perform. They can just have a tape sent to them, and Suzuki clearly isn't ready. The way he looks, the way he looks as he wrestles, I don't think he'll ever be ready.
Well, he's Luger, and whatever was mentioned. But the other thing with Suzuki is that Suzuki was hired months and months ago. He was in the system for months, and in that whole time, I don't know the answer to this. Did they ever, in 6 months, flying him out here, giving his wife a deal? Did they ever, send him put on some cards, to see what he could do and couldn't do? They came up with this idea to make him the lead heel on Raw when Triple H was going to do a movie. It's great that didn't happen. Great that the guy didn't do a movie because, my God, just imagine. If they, and the other gimmick obviously was a stronger gimmick in their mind, although it would have bit them and they knew it and they changed to the Hirohito gimmick. But I'm just dumbfounded that this ever happened, because this is not, everyone's going to make mistakes on talent, but this one was a big mistake.
It was a big mistake, and it could have been avoided. It could have been avoided by exactly what you were saying. They could either look at a tape or they could bring him in and have him do dark matches. It's a huge company. They have plenty of opportunities to. They
had 6 months. They could have told Jim Cornette, we want him wrestling for a month on OVW with this gimmick, and then evaluate him. And I have no clue why they don't do this with all the new gimmicks. I guess with Mordecai it's kind of hard because he was 7 in OVW, and it's pretty hard to give the guy a new gimmick in the same territory without making it look stupid. But in most cases, or in a lot of cases, they should be trying these acts out, trying to get the kinks out before they debut, rather than let's put them out there on TV, they flop on TV, and then you got to backpedal.
It's another thing too that they don't have places to send them. They have OVW, a small developmental territory, and nowhere else to send anybody. And that, if they had a much bigger developmental system, then you'd have some flexibility with these things. And they don't have it, and they don't seem to be building for it. And they've run out of wrestling companies to feed them. So, I think this is a big problem going into the next 3 or 4 years.
Oh yeah, no question. No question that they need to have 2 or 3 developmental territories and sign up a lot of guys, for developmental, or else 2-3 years down the line it's going to be a lot worse because the talent that we have now will be stale, even if they're good. This has been such a negative show, and aside from the Flair book, but I think that I was still bad. But then again, when I'm trying to think of let's look at the light at the end of the tunnel. And granted, I think that this Sunday's pay-per-view with Triple H and Benoit will probably be the best pay-per-view main event we've had in several months. Hopefully, it will be anyway. But overall, still, that's a great match. That might be a great match, might just be a good match. But it's not like there's something coming up on the horizon, and that's a scary thing too, because in wrestling, there's always got to be something on the horizon. It's just the nature of what it is.
Yeah, they've got some very good people on top, but they're running out of steam, and then you're right, they don't have anything. And there is no dream match, on the horizon like they're all. I mean, in a way, at all like that. And we haven't had that in years and years because at least before there was always those Goldberg guys who were out there who they could sign and bring back. And now there's none of those people either. And there's nobody in another promotion. There's nobody, there's nobody to spark anything.
There's Sting, but they don't seem that interested in them.
Yeah, they don't seem that interested in them. And every month to me that goes by that they're not doing Sting, Sting's going to be less effective by the time they get him in here.
I don't think Sting's going to be effective anyway.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think that one passed, a year and a half ago, really.
Yeah, and he's retired, and he's for the rest of it. I mean, I think.
And I think the other part, what you said, retired. You know what? He's mentally retired.
Right.
I mean, you saw him in TNA. It's like he'll come out there and he'll do a few things, but WWE standard is pretty high, and if he came in doing that, it wouldn't work.
Right.
You're going to have to do a lot more than he was doing. Let's go to Mitch in Berkeley. On.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Doing really good.
Dave, I love your show, and I must say that I'm excited to hear Rage Against the Machine or some music from the 90s in your intros. Much as I love the Leonard Skinner and retro stuff, I think that's a good change.
Okay, cool. I have nothing to do with the music.
I know, but, hey, I just wanted to see what's the SummerSlam card look like? I'm not trying to make a joke, even though it is.
Hopefully Benoit Triple H. I mean, if it was up to me, and granted, you don't have, without the ability to sign other guys and saying that nobody knew was coming in, okay, I think that they need to have Benoit beat Triple H and then set up for Triple H to win the rematch at SummerSlam by putting up his hair, putting up, Evolution must break up, or some real tangible stipulation. Mm-hmm. Because, my God, last year they got a lot of good buy rates because they kept putting people's career on, up. But you can't do that every month.
Right.
But you got to do something for SummerSlam because there is no dream match for SummerSlam. Okay. And then we got Undertaker and Bradshaw, Kurt Angle and Eddie.
Kurt Angle's going to come back to fight Eddie?
That's the plan as of this week. If he can make it. And Kurt Angle's medically cleared to wrestle now, but they're holding him off until SummerSlam, from what I gather.
If he can't, and him and Eddie don't, meet at SummerSlam and have a great match, then I feel even worse for Eddie than I already do.
What, in the sense of?
In the sense of getting the title pulled from him, and then just being kind of lost in the shuffle.
It's going to be tough because they have to have a good match, in a sense, because if they don't, both Eddie and Angle, I think the company's going to kind of lose a little faith in both of them because they're put in a position where the expectations are high. Mm-hmm. So they got to deliver. And with Kurt, it's real tough because it's going to be his first match in months. And again, we know how bad he's hurting because he ain't going to tell. He's not going to tell us. Right. You know what I mean? Whatever he's going to downplay it because he's Kurt Angle.
Will he do any TV warm up, or will he just make his return at the?
I don't know. I mean, to me, he should do house show warm-up. I wouldn't do TV warm-up, because there's no point in him wrestling. To me, there's no point in him wrestling in a match before SummerSlam that people see, but, maybe go on the road for a week and doing some 8-minute matches at the house show just to get his timing back. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
Do you feel bad for Guerrero getting the title pulled? Do you feel it was just a bad time for him to get the title, or do you think that's just the nature of the business that you never thought that him or Benoit were really going to get a spotlight, title reign?
I feel bad for him in the sense of he got the title and his challengers all, Brock Lesnar quit. They didn't decide to turn Undertaker. Kurt got hurt. Big Show got hurt, although, him and Big Show weren't going to have classic matches anyway. But he was put in a tough position, and, there's so much pressure. Again, and I mean, I can say it without knowing what I mean because I haven't walked it. But talking to enough guys who've been in that position, there is so much pressure being champion of the WWF that people don't realize. And for a guy like Eddie, or any of them, not just Eddie, but Eddie feels it, and he's a very emotional guy. And I don't know what his public reaction to losing the championship is, but privately, come on. I mean, everyone goes crazy to a degree anyway. It's got to hurt him unless they promised him to get it back. In which case, you can justify it by being part of a program. But I don't know if they've done that.
Do you think he's going to get it back? I kind of think that's it for him for at least a long time, if not forever.
the nature of the numbers tells me, and, who's around and everything, that he'll probably get it back at some point. But, I don't know. The size may rebel against the size thing and think that that's been the problem as he pushed small guys, in which case, no, then he wouldn't get it back. I don't know.
Any word on where they're going for WrestleMania? I know another caller thought Triple H Orton. Where do you think?
Triple H Orton's been the plan for a long time. In fact, Triple H wanted to wrestle Orton at last year's WrestleMania, but they recognized Orton wasn't ready yet. So this is time for next week. We got to head to a break. Okay. All right. You listen to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. Wrestling Observer Live. Dave Meltzer, editor of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter, with Bruce Mitchell, the Pro Wrestling Forge. And Bruce, we've had almost 2 hours. And I think that a lot of this is starting to tie together. And, with the Flair book, I think that Flair opened up a subject that nobody had ever thought about, just the emotional state of the top guy. We've talked about it because of what happened over the last couple of years with Austin, where it's been, kind of a big deal, when you've got this guy who's the biggest star in the business and he walks out a couple of times.
Right.
And over the pressure, there's other reasons, but the pressure's a lot of it. And with Flair, you see it. I'm not saying with Eddie that you see it, but it's a real, Brock Lesnar, Bill Goldberg. We're seeing it with so many of the top guys, and it's a real major part of this industry.
Yeah, I think so. And being the top guy is a very important role, but you don't have total control. Look at what's happened to Eddie. You've got to be in the right place and the right time in this business in so many different ways, and the pressure's there, and you got to make it whether everything's in order or not. And it's a tough business.
Yeah, and we're in a tough period. Obviously, we've talked about, and this show's pretty much emblematic. We have got to go for now. We'll be back in 2 weeks live. So next week, of course, is the Vengeance pay-per-view. We'll be back in 2 weeks. We'll start talking about the Hall of Fame over the next couple of weeks in July as well. You're listening to Wrestling Observer Live on the Sports Byline Radio Network. I want to thank Bruce for joining us on July 4th and thank everyone for listening.